Ladies and gentlemen, it would appear that Uncharted 4 is on track to be 1080p/60 frames a second. And indeed, Naughty Dog are telling users that it's 1080p/60, by the way, is an objective for all of their PlayStation 4 titles. So currently, of course, we are waiting for The Last of Us, which is the remastered version. And despite the fact there were initially some doubts over the whole 60 frames per second thing, particularly as recently details have emerged concerning a frame lock for 30 FPS. Now, Naughty Dog's community strategist, Arne Meyer, actually spoke on this and said, I think you'll find it's really stable at 60 FPS. There are a lot of games out there that say they're 60, they feel 60, but if you push them and find some frame rate dips. And I think every game's going to do that, and it's going to happen to us too. It's not something to be massive where you're going to tell the difference. I can't tell, but then I'm not a frame rate counter. Some people can. And then what we came out and said is we're going to hit 60. We saw there's a lot of debate between that and said, why not cater for both sides? And that's why there's the option for the 60 and 30 frames per second lock. So if you've really got a strong preference, why not provide the customization? And he also said that some people, and I don't really understand this one personally, but apparently one user on NeoGAF said that there was a person who said he gets more nauseous at 60 FPS rather than 30. And so, obviously, that user in particular is a happy camper. He also added a lot of it was because we could try something out with a PS4 engine. This, by the way, is in discussion with The Last of Us Remastered. How far can it go? Can we do a 1080p/60 FPS? We wanted to do that, but for the types of effects we wanted to put on screen, 720p/30 was just fine. Now, with a push to do even further, that's just not enough, so we're trying to rise to meet that kind of challenge. This means, of course, that theoretically Uncharted 4 should, this is out of quote, should be a 1080p/60. I think that's what we want to push for, what we're really doing for this generation. It's a sort of mandate from where we're building for the PS4 engine. Let's just see if we can do it and hit it, and we hit it with The Last of Us Remastered, so why not stick with this? And obviously, discussion with Uncharted 4. He also adds that I personally think it would work well because there's a lot of attention on the studio between the successors of Uncharted 2, 3 and The Last of Us. It'd be nice to give players the opportunity to go back and play the older games, and this is, by the way, in discussion with the remastering of Uncharted. And he said, yeah, I think it would be nice to go back and play the older games, and people who are new to the PlayStation platform, that would be great. But I have no idea how that could fall into our timeline. So we're just going to have to wait and see. You know, I'd like to see it, and Shuhei Yoshida would also like to see it too. Now, out of quote, let's get a couple of things kind of cleared up. It's worth remembering that despite the fact that The Last of Us Remastered has been in development, since the PlayStation 3 version was actually shipped and finished, it's only had around 30 people working on it. So basically, since the title was released, there's only been a very minimalistic staff, really, minimalist, completely and utterly, especially in today's gaming industry, that have actually been working to port this over, and there was a lot of work involved. Don't forget, it was heavily tailored towards the PS3. It was utilizing the cell processor, and it really did push the PS3 to pretty much the absolute limits. And this was a discussion at Sinfo, S-I-N-F-O. If you want more information on that, you can go ahead and Google or search on the channel. And they go right ahead and state, you know, quite categorically that a lot of the shifts from the PS3 to the PS4 were actually quite difficult. They had to basically recode things from the ground up in some cases because it was so optimized towards the PS3. So that just gives you an indication of how much work they actually had to do. So it's very impressive they managed to get this over. Now, personally, what he's basically saying, if you read between the lines, is the title, for the most part, should hit 60, but occasionally it will dip below, which is acceptable. I would actually rather the title dip occasionally than, you know, consistently and suffer constant broken and torn frames, which is, well, let's just say it's a problem with quite a lot of games, which he himself points out. I mean, quite a few games do it. It's an issue I've got, actually. A lot of titles, they'll say that they're at 60 FPS, but in reality, that's pretty much if you're just pressed your nose up against a wall, then yeah, it will go to 60. Other times, in more realistic scenarios, it does start diving down a little bit. And so you'll start noticing every gamer's best friend in the world, torn frames of animation. So I can understand their desire to put the 30 FPS cap in there. I have to confess, I've never ever heard of anyone who actually feels more nauseous when the frame rate's higher. I'm not doubting the guy, because obviously he was an independent person, but hey, if he feels the lower frame rate's a good thing, then more power to him, or more power to Naughty Dog to actually provide it. As for Uncharted 4, it's maybe forgotten about, but back just prior to the launch of Uncharted 3, I don't remember the exact date, but it's floating around somewhere. Naughty Dog actually released a trailer available to the public. I think you could download it if I remember correctly. I think it was like a zip or whatever. You could download this sucker. And the title was basically running on non-PlayStation 3 hardware. I believe it was some type of development system. So the game was basically running at 60 FPS rather than 30. And the difference in fluidity in terms of the animation is pretty damn impressive. It looks really beautiful. Obviously some of the graphics have aged some now, but the animation looks really top notch, and you can see that they did have to dial it back for the final finished game, so that's a bit of a shame. I would actually really like to see a remastering. I mean, obviously it would take a lot of work because there's a lot of games involved, but I think it would be a much better experience, to be honest, than playing it via, well, the cloud. I really don't like that idea. I think a remastering would be pretty awesome. Obviously it really depends on the amount of work involved, but even if they just did something simple like improve the lighting a little bit, better quality textures, 1080p/60, I think for many people that would be enough, especially if it was a digital download and done at a fairly, you know, a slight discount in price. I think that would be pretty cool. Anyway guys, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. It's been a bit of a shorty one, but I'll see you soon. Take care and bye for now.